Good morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ham, coming to you as always from the Spotlight Studios here in Morristown, New Jersey. My guest today has over 25 years of experience in the power systems and energy industries and has held a variety of leadership positions throughout his career. He served in executive and management positions at Fuel Cell Energy, Inc., Petra Solar, and GE. Additionally, he has extensive research and development experience at the U.S. Department of Energy through various roles at the National Energy Technology Laboratory. That was hard to say, a lot of big words right in a row. In Morgantown, West Virginia, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he currently serves as the president and CEO of Ideal Power. He is Dan Brdar. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So, energy. I mean, we really haven't done a ton on energy throughout the life of this show. We've been going for almost 2 years now. So let's talk a little bit about what is Ideal Power and what do you guys do?
Well, Ideal Power is a company that has developed a unique semiconductor technology. It's a semiconductor that's used for power switching, and it's used to control the flow of energy. Semiconductor power switches are in things that we use every day. They're in your appliances in your kitchen. They're in your current vehicles, electric vehicles. If you've got solar on your roof or your business, they're there. If you're looking at things like energy storage or wind power or anything that has a motor like an air conditioner, they all use semiconductor power switches. And so we're focused on bringing out a really novel, high efficient, low energy loss power switch that has some unique capabilities that are really well suited for some of the big changes that are happening in the energy space today.
Awesome. So how does one get involved in something like that? Like, how do you, I know you have an extensive background, like I outlined in your bio, but let's talk through that, because I feel like we need to know more about you and that you're not just this guy being like, hey, we do power switches. And people are like, what the hell is that? But yeah, let's learn a little bit more about you. So how did you kind of weave your way to this? Has it always been in this specific field of energy and all that kind of stuff?
No, I'm an engineer by training, but I have my whole career I've been involved in researching, developing, and commercializing new energy-related technologies. So a whole variety of technologies that are out there in the marketplace I've been involved in one form or another, whether it's more efficient gas turbines, whether it's fuel cells, whether it's solar power, or what we're doing now, semiconductor power switches. So for me, it's always been about finding really unique technologies and being able to get involved with them at a really early stage and get them through that challenging period when you're trying to figure out how do you actually commercialize the technology, get it to work, and then get it into the marketplace for people to use in their products.
Right. And so it seems like a lot of the energy stuff that you're doing is like the new wave, of
Yes.
technologies and all that kind of stuff. Was that something that was just that piqued your interest? Because I mentioned, I think it's definitely over 25 years. I think another bio that I saw was over 30 years. So you've been in this for a long time. Was the new technology type stuff, new energy, sources and processes and stuff? Was that like something that you were just interested in and engaged with like right out of the gate, or did it kind of maybe stumbled upon it at some point?
I've always been interested in leading edge technologies. We have a lot of things that have been around for a long time where there just hasn't been a lot of innovation. And, as an engineer or somebody who likes to create things, likes to solve problems, working on the old stuff is not a lot of fun.
Right.
It's kind of more maintaining and incremental improving things, doing things that are really unique and innovative, where you're starting from a concept where you don't even know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
And figure out how do you make it work, then how do you physically manufacture it, then how do you use it in a product. To me, that's where there's a lot of fun. There's an opportunity to be really creative and to work with really creative, smart people as a part of that too.
Yeah. What I think is so cool about that, so this is my creative outlet outside of my 9-to-5 job, but it seems as though this type of industry, while it may seem as very I don't know, structured, I don't know if that's the right word, but the energy, when people think energy, they think of just kind of this big energy, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yep.
to be able to take that creative side and also marry it with the science side of it, I think is really cool. So, take me through that process. Are you constantly trying to identify different problems that may exist in certain technologies and that kind of stuff? Or is it something that's brought to you hey, we have this idea, make it work?
There is so much going on in energy that's new and innovative, and an awful lot of it does not come from the big energy companies,
Right?
Because they're all about sort of protecting the status quo and maintaining their positions in the marketplace. So the innovation comes from other places. You look at electric vehicles. It wasn't Ford or Nissan that innovated on the electric vehicle side. It was innovative startups, Tesla, Rivian, others. If you look at what's gone on in the solar industry, it didn't come from people that were already in the power business. It came from people that said, hey, there's got to be a better, cleaner way to do this. So, I've been fortunate, and it really goes back to my days at the Department of Energy, where I was involved in a lot of energy R&D that was getting funded, that was really at the stage of conceptual ideas. Can this thing even be worked? The government is involved in funding it because it's so far from commercialization. Industry's not going to do it. So I started early in my career with getting all this exposure to these new technologies that nobody knew whether they were going to be commercial or not. And it really piqued my interest and saw, really, where's all this creativity coming from? And more importantly, when you think about it, we all spend a lot of time working. You spend a lot of hours. It's not just about earning your paycheck. It's you spend a big part of your adult life in your career. And when you think about it, you think, I really want to do something where I have an opportunity to make the world a better place, to actually do something that leaves a positive impact. Even if my positive impact may not be visible to most people,
sure,
it's better than doing something where I sustained a status quo that wasn't good for our environment
right,
or the world in general.
Right. And so I have a two-pronged question. I'm going to ask you the first question. They're related, but not. So I'll
Sure.
get to it. So the first question would be, you've been doing this for a long time. Has there ever been, what's a project that you've worked on? Maybe it's one that you're working on now. I don't know if you could talk about it. Or one that you've worked on in the past that you're just like, this is awesome. This is like my favorite project that I've ever worked on. It's going to be a total game changer. Like what is that one? If there is one.
What I'm doing right now, I think very much about this one, because the technology that we're involved in, we're really at a fortunate time in that our semiconductor power switch technology is coming for commercialization at the same time that two macro trends are happening in the world around us. One is the wide-scale deployment of renewable energy, like solar and wind, and renewable energy coupled with storage, and the final adoption of electric vehicles. So to be bringing out an innovative technology that can impact both of those and benefit from the timing of both of those really coming to their fruition is really exciting, because there's nothing worse than having a great technology, but you're too early for the markets that you could have the biggest impact on.
Right. Yeah. It seems like they're just kind of like, on similar tracks, and then they're going to kind of collide together at some point to create something really cool. I'm going to get back to what you were just talking about, but the second part of my question was, have you worked on a project where maybe in your head, and this is me not being an engineer and not working on projects like this, so forgive me if this is like a peon question, but have you worked on a project where it's just like, this is so badass, like this is going to be a game changer, and just like you can't make it work? Because I would imagine there's a lot of trial and error, scientific method. I learned that back in school, and it doesn't always work. So have there been projects like that have happened with you?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when I was involved in a lot of the government funded research, because that's really the role that government R&D is playing, is to take things that are high risk or too far out for the industry to fund, but have tremendous technical promise or tremendous economic promise or environmental promise. So I saw some really great technologies when I was at the Department of Energy that, you funded to see whether they were conceptually going to work. Some of them were, some of them they could get there, but it was going to take a lot of capital. And some of them just, it was a good theory, but, practically it's probably not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that so interesting, because I'm sure there are just like, people bringing so many cool ideas to people like you or Department of Energy or different companies and all that kind of stuff. And while it may seem like, wow, like this could be great, but it's just like, you can't quite like get it. You know what I mean?
Well, the funny thing about technology is the early you are in its development, the easier you think it's going to be, the quicker it's going to take to get there, and the least amount of money it's going to take.
Yeah.
And reality turns out to be very different, because developing new technology is really challenging. It doesn't really matter what the area of technology is, especially nowadays, because the technologies that everybody's working on, regardless of what field you're in, they're just increasingly complex. You look at the energy world, there's still a dramatic push for improving energy efficiency. But, when you're doing something that's 35% efficient, getting it to 50% efficient, pretty straightforward. Getting it to 90, it's harder. Going from 90 to 95 is really hard. Going from 95 to 99 gets extremely hard. So you get into this challenge where the technology improvements get more complicated. They're more difficult. But that's also part of where you really challenge the creativity and the technical expertise of the people you get to work with.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to get into like the team, the people you get to work with a little bit later in this episode.
Yeah.
But for the technology that you're working on now, could you give us like the layman's version of like how this stuff works?
Sure. We think of switches. Think about your light switch. The light switch, you flip it on or flip it off, and it controls the flow of electricity to the light you're controlling, for example. Well, you can do the same thing with semiconductors. Semiconductors can be turned on or off. And we use semiconductors to control the flow of energy for most of the devices that we use nowadays. Your laptop has them, your washer and dryer have them, your refrigerator have them. It's all about controlling the flow of energy, and it's doing it in a way that is efficient as possible, making it as small as possible and low cost as possible.
Right. Gotcha. So going back to you, and this is very interesting, but I want to talk more about you because we try to like really hone in on the stories of the people that are on this show. So, like I mentioned before, and we've talked a little bit about your background, different places, different stops, all that kind of stuff. And obviously you've been doing this for a long time. So are you able to kind of, we mentioned GE, we mentioned the Department of Energy a few times. We were just talking about Petra Solar, which is here in Jersey, which you were at. You don't miss the snow, which I totally understand. Now you're in Texas with, Ideal Power. So as you're going through and you're, maybe I guess jumping from company to company, are you able to kind of like be like, hey, this is a company that's doing something that I really believe in and I think is going to be a difference maker? Or is it something where it's just like, hey, this company offered me a job and I'm going to go take it? Like, how does that process work?
A lot of it is, people think about global energy as being this enormous, unwieldy beast. But at the end of the day, it's a small world.
Yeah.
So you cross people in your career multiple times. So most of the places I've worked have been as a result of somebody I worked with previously and said, hey, I know a guy who would be a great fit for our team and what we're trying to do. Let's see if he's interested. And that happens a lot, even when I've been recruiting people also, you find a lot of smart people out there, but a lot of times it comes from your network because, over time, energy is such an all-encompassing kind of idea that draws a lot of talent, that you build networks of people that that you want to work with and continue to work with.
Yeah. And so I would imagine, even though this is a small world type thing, like you're saying, and, like you've been at Ideal Power since 2014, right? So it's been a few years, it's been there for a while. Yes. So you get there and, you want to, like put your stamp on it. Is it something where you start like pulling on those networks, being like, hey, I know this person that does this over at this other place, and maybe doesn't exactly like, they're not working on semiconductor power switches. I had to write that down because I always just say power switches and I'm just thinking light switches. But is that something where you just like, you start drawing on that network to bring those same people in to help you do what you do, right?
Yeah. I mean, it could be people you bring into the company, or it could be people that you collaborate with the company that they're at because of things that you want to try and do together. Or it could be people that you'd worked with that are now working for a company that ultimately is a customer.
Right. And so you've been in a leadership role at a lot of these places that you've been at. So talk to me about like that, the different, let's start with the difference between being just the new guy, I guess, and then going from like building your way through that, I guess, corporate ladder, for lack of a better phrase, and then getting into a leadership position. Like, what are the big, key takeaways from that journey, I guess?
Well, when you're trying to solve, complex problems and issues with new technology, my experience has always been, it's about how do you bring people together to problem solve together and create an environment where people understand, look, we all win or lose together.
Yeah.
You bring tools that you've learned from being at companies like General Electric and other places to help them problem solve so that, you can, whether you're identified as the leader or you become one as a result of saying, hey, look, I have some tools. I want to help us solve this problem so that we can be successful and go on and do tackle the next issue that we might have coming. You kind of end up in leadership positions as a result of that, because your ability to get people together and solve problems and give them tools and sometimes ask questions that might be tough questions, or ask questions that maybe somebody doesn't want to ask for fear that they'll be thought of, oh, you're stupid, you don't know that. Because we engineers, we're pretty critical of each other.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of smart people in the room, I would imagine, right? So it could be a little intimidating.
And it's like where I am now. I mean, I'm the, only engineer here who's not a PhD. Well, it gives me the right to say, hey, I understand the complex math here, but let me ask a really stupid question that, forces you to take a step back and say, okay, yeah, we haven't thought about that.
Right. Is this a role that you're in right now at CEO of Ideal Power? Is this a role where, I'm not sure the size and the scope of the company. I know you're doing some really cool things, but is this something where you're, kind of with the boots on the ground type people, like those, maybe, newer people that you just brought in, all that kind of stuff? Or is it something where you're kind of like trying to oversee the scope of the entire company, or is it a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
We're a small company, so it involves a lot of hands-on work from everybody. We don't really we have titles and responsibilities. If there's something that comes up we need to figure out, it may have nothing to do with your job description, but we know you're a smart person and you might be able to contribute to this. So we get in a room and we go figure it out. So, and it's part of what's fun. If I can tell you a quick little story, yeah. When I was working at General Electric, I was out cutting my grass one day, and my neighbor comes over and he says, you're a senior person in General Electric. Why are you cutting your own grass? Are you too cheap to do it? And without even thinking about it, the response that came out of my mouth was the truth. And it said, I cut my grass because when I'm done, I see the results of my effort. And sometimes in a big company, I don't see that for weeks and weeks at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get that. Not that, I'm a big wig at a General Electric type place, but I totally get that because you're working on something for a while and you don't necessarily see the results. And it's just like you feel like you're spinning your wheels sometimes, which can be frustrating, especially when you're doing stuff like you're doing. You're trying to make something that's new. It's like never been done before.
Exactly.
So you have to, you got to see some results at some point. So talk to me about the importance too of the team. Because I feel like, so now this, I'm not sure if this would happen. I'm sure it could. Because I feel like every industry has something like this where you may have people that, on paper, they're like really smart, could definitely do it, but maybe they don't fit the collaborative nature of what the team's all about. So talk to me about the importance of the team and how you try to construct the team. Are they a lot of people like you, or do you need people that are a little bit different than you to try to think differently? How do you approach that?
I try and make sure that the team that we have, everybody is really unique in terms of their background, their experience, kind of how they work, but also has the concept of being a team player, and treating each other with respect. It's important because if your team doesn't work, you can't get anything done. And particularly in small companies, small companies don't have really deep benches of people. There's 3 people lined up for that job, but that person doesn't work out. You've got to have a team that actually can work really well, who can have technical debates if they need to in a way that doesn't damage relationships.
Right,
So it's really important about finding the right people who have not just the experience, but the right approach. And when you get teams that have people from really different backgrounds, it actually just makes it more interesting. Because people just bring different traditions, they bring different ideas about, just life in general, and it makes it more interesting with the people you work with.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I feel like just even ways people just like see the world, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like
definitely.
how that operates and how other people operate. I think you grow yourself. Like even doing something like this. Like I don't know you from Adam. Like this is the first time we've ever met before, but we're just talking and we're trying to feel each other out and learn about each other and see how, we operate and all that kind of stuff. And, if we can do something together and all that. So I think
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So this is another leadership question. So when you make the jump at whatever point in your career from being, in a non-leadership position to a leadership position, did that all of a sudden create like, maybe some doubts, or was it just because were you confident in your abilities to kind of make that jump, or was it because of the collaborative natures of those teams like you were talking about? Did you feel comfortable being like, okay, now, I got my hand on the wheel here and now I'm going to, drive?
Well, I think, anytime you're responsible for a group or an organization and you're trying to deal with, just regular day-to-day business issues, technical problems, whatever the case may be, there's always some reflection of, geez, do we have a path here? Do we know what we're doing? Do we have clear line of sight to what the problem is or how we're going to solve it? I mean, that's just the nature of business because, you're frequently in a leadership position of having to make decisions with less than all the information you'd like to have.
Yeah.
So it's really trusting in your team and having good communication with the team and the team members to say, hey, we're bringing our best judgment and the information that we have. And as a result of that, we want to make sure that you have enough information to make a leadership decision, but also create an environment where if they don't agree with the decision, they can say, hey, I'm not sure this is the right thing because you got to have that give and take, because you want to make sure you're making the best decision that you possibly can with the information you've got.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned to you before, this is a very unique episode of this show. So we do a lot of real estate stuff because I'm in real estate. We do a lot of business. We do a lot of entrepreneurship type stuff. We do, we've done a ton of different things, but I feel like this is, this is very unique for this show. And we're at this point, as at the time of this recording, we're 123 episodes in. So the people that are listening, the spotlighters, like why should they care about what you're doing? I mean, it's easy. Like, I know you care about it and I think it's really cool, but why should they care?
Well, I mean, they should care because we are in a world that is changing pretty rapidly. In terms of how we make and use energy, the kind of vehicles that we drive every day. And those technologies are going to continue to get better. They're going to get more cost effective. And you should be thinking about where are the companies that are potentially playing a role in helping that? Because, one is you may want to look at them for your own investment reasons, or you may want to look at them because you're interested in technology. But be aware that there are a lot of companies that are out there, big and small, that are doing things that are going to really impact your life and how you do things 5 and 10 years down the road.
Yeah. Is it something where like they can like, I don't know if track is the right word, but kind of like follow the process or the progress, I guess is a better word. Just because I feel like that's something where, people, like when the electric car like hit the market, people knew it was coming and then boom, it was there. And we're just like, oh, okay. But is this something that like, I mean, maybe that was just me, but maybe you were different, but I still drive a truck, but, and it's definitely not electric. Are they gonna be, I mean, I know they're electric trucks, but they're a little bit,
they're not there yet.
Yeah, it's not there yet. And you live in Texas, so you have to drive a truck. I feel like that's the law. But so like, talk to me about that. Like, can people kind of follow along with how these things are progressing and different things that are coming to the market, or maybe different ideas that people are trying?
Sure. You see it a lot in the news. I mean, you talk about electric vehicles. I mean, electric vehicles actually, Chevy came out with one 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Chrysler worked on one 20 years ago. So it's been a long process for electric vehicles to get to where they are. But what happens is they get to the point where they sort of reach a tipping point where they have advanced enough from a commercial standpoint, from a technical standpoint, from a cost standpoint, that now all of a sudden they're starting to gain market share. Same thing with solar energy. Solar energy has been around a long time. Yeah. I mean, I think Jimmy Carter put it on the White House roof. But what happened with solar energy is it got more and more efficient. Its cost dropped dramatically. Now all of a sudden you start to see it being very commonplace. You see businesses being created that are basically selling to homeowners and doing installs. The same thing's happening with energy storage. Energy storage solves a lot of problems in our electrical grid and distribution system, but it's always been too expensive. Well, as the cost of batteries has come down, you start to see energy storage available for businesses, available for your homes, as a way to back up your solar power if you have it on your home. So a lot of these are really just what you see in the natural news progression in terms of companies that are coming along, plants that are getting built. You look at what's going on right now in the semiconductor space. Here in Austin, Texas, Samsung is building a $17 billion semiconductor facility.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the things that are around some of the news stories that you might hear where you say, why are they doing that? Well, they're doing it because there's this huge demand as a result of these technologies that are reaching the marketplace.
Right. So that's interesting that you say that, because I was writing down some things that I wanted to make sure that we touched on as we progress through this episode. So one of the things that I wrote down was competing. Right. So like, you're a small company, you laid out some companies that, make electric cars. We all know who they are. You mentioned Samsung right there. I mean, obviously these are companies with deep pockets and, a lot of resources. And you as a smaller company doing this new innovative type stuff, does that present a lot of challenges, or is it maybe because you're a little bit smaller, you're able to be faster? Like, take me through that, like the competition side of it.
Yeah, one of the greatest advantages you have as a small company is speed. You can make decisions faster. If you find an issue, you can change direction faster. If you need to change a supplier, you can do that faster because you don't have the bureaucracy, you don't have the many layers of decision making. So it's a competitive advantage. What you also find is that a lot of companies that are out there, are really interested in working with small companies because it may create opportunities for them to license a technology that they don't have to develop on their own. It may be an opportunity for them to co-develop something that leverages the technology where people can bring very complementary skills to bring a new product out. It creates opportunities for them to acquire other companies. So, I think, there's just so much interest in technology, and the rate of change and innovation just continues to accelerate, that it creates opportunities for small companies to bring a product to marketplace. And they don't necessarily have to do it all themselves. They can leverage other players that are out there to bring them something that is an innovative solution that they don't have themselves.
And does that go back to that small network thing, like the collaboration side of it? Is that just, like the small world? Does that lend itself to the collaboration side of it? Is it just like, hey, I know Dan and his team are working on this. Like they would be perfect to bring into this. Like, let's do it. Or is it more sometimes like a little bit guarded?
It's a little bit of both. It depends on who they are. Sometimes small companies, you're a little wary of if a really big company approaches it. You don't know what their intent is. I know when I was in General Electric, it could go either way, depending on what the objective was of what they wanted to do with regard to a certain technology. When you're working with people that it helps a lot. Those networks really come into play to know, all right, is this something that is going to be a good relationship where the companies their values and their cultures are going to be compatible or not. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. And I would imagine, maybe, I don't know why I said that. Do you find yourself collaborating with the same people a lot of times, or is it, kind of, whatever?
Once in a while, but usually it's your
case by
networks
case basis, I guess.
Yeah, really. And what happens a lot of times is there may be something that you are interested in doing with another firm and you don't know them yourself, but that network helps connect you to the right person at that company too. So a lot of times the network is really a bridge to get to the organizations that you might want to go collaborate with for something.
Right. And so I know this is the other thing that I wrote down. This is not related to what we were just talking about because sometimes we get a little all over the place. But so when we're talking about, the stuff that you're doing, and I know that you're obviously very invested in that stuff, but obviously you've been in different areas of these new technologies and energy products and all these different things. Are there things that are happening maybe outside of your sphere that you're just like, wow, that's so cool. If I wasn't doing what I was doing, I would love to work on that. Like, are there things that really like pique your interest and I want to go do that? Not that you want to go do it. I don't mean to, say it that way, but you're interested in them.
There are, I think there are, I think what's happening with energy storage is one of those things where, batteries are going to be very commonplace in a lot of applications where they haven't been in the past. I think there's a lot of stuff happening in terms of like software and the intelligence of a lot of the platforms that are out there, the ability to actually mine data and do things with it that are going to allow businesses to really have much better access to information in terms of their customers and how they use information. There's just innovation going on all around.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also, so I was clicking around on the Ideal Power website before we got on here, and I know there's like an investor portal and all that kind of stuff. So talk to me about like the importance of maintaining the relationships with those investors. I feel like that's, especially as a small company, I'm sure that is a huge part of like what it is that you guys do, is making sure that you have the backing, right, to fund
absolutely.
some of these projects. So talk to me about that. 'Cause obviously you have your own team, but that's like almost, if not more as important, maybe even more important sometimes, is the people that are actually funding what you're doing. So it's finding those people and getting them involved.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep them apprised of what's going on. When you're a small company, early stage in technology, you tend to be very news driven.
Yeah.
So it's not about what were your financial numbers for the quarter. It's more about, what's the news progress that's evident that you can talk about. So a lot of it is communicating that, make sure you're communicating it efficiently. Going to investor conferences to, tell new investors about the company, make them aware of it, and also to update those that are already out there, doing the quarterly earnings calls and so forth, to really just keep everybody current in terms of the progress the company has achieved and what it's planning on doing in the coming quarters.
Yeah. So then also, like with what you're doing now, sticking with that, maybe looking more into the future, are there things that you guys are hoping to accomplish over, maybe even just short-term goals? Obviously long-term goals are, to get it where it needs to be, but like what are some things that you're hoping to accomplish over the next year, 2 years, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we got several things. One is we are doing a demonstration project that's funded by the U.S. Navy of our technology. where our technology is being put into a utility scale circuit breaker that the Navy wants to have for their ship electrification program. The Navy is transitioning to, all or mostly electric ships versus what they've been doing previously with, moving, liquid fuels around the world and all the complexity that goes with that. We're going to be doing a demonstration of the technology the middle of this year that incorporates our semiconductor technology. And we are now engaging with customers who want to start to evaluate our technology. We've announced that we have an evaluation agreement with one of the world's top 10 global automakers, one of the world's top solar providers. There's kind of a list of them that are going to be evaluating our technology for use in their applications. So you'll see some of that. And then we are actually bringing our product into commercial sales here a little bit further down the line as we get some feedback from some of these customers that are going to participate in our evaluation program. So we're really, at the beginning stages of our commercialization here at a pretty exciting time for the company.
Yeah, that's really cool. The Navy thing really piques my interest. The other thing really piques my interest too. I think that's really cool. And then to me, it just seems so cool to be able to like work on projects like that. Like, yeah, we're going to go put I have to read it again, semiconductor power switches in like Navy ships, like circuit board and all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to help basically power the U.S. Navy around the oceans. Wild. That's wild to me. I didn't even know that was the thing until just now when you just told me. I just figured, they're huge, so they must use, like gas, not gas, oil, whatever the hell they use. I don't know. I'm not a seaman, I guess, but so I think that's very cool. So also a couple more questions. The majority of the people that listen to this show are between the ages of 25 and 35. That's generally the demographic. So they're young professionals, they're entrepreneurs, they're, in a lot of different kinds of industries. So I think one of the things, at least from what I'm gathering from you, is that you seem to have like a passion for what it is that you're doing. So maybe some of these people that are, maybe at a corporate 9-to-5 want to go do something else. Maybe it's something where they're kind of working their way up that corporate ladder like you did and doing different things. Do you have anything that you wanted, like maybe for them to kind of hear from you as far as like following those things, like using what you do, finding something you really like in that field and kind of running with it?
You hit it right on the head. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're stuck in a job. Okay. That's just earning a paycheck. Who wants to do that for 30, 40, whatever, however long years? If you're not really excited about what you're doing, and for a lot of people, especially when you're really at the early stages of the career, you don't know yet. You haven't been exposed to enough things. Yeah. But I would say be open to working outside of your comfort zone. Be willing to fail. Because you learn a lot more from your failures than you do your successes. But listen to what your heart's telling you. If your heart's telling you, hey, you know what, it didn't work out well when I went and did project A, B, or C, but I really enjoyed that. And ask yourself, well, why? Make sure why did you enjoy it? Was it the people you worked with, or was it what you were doing, or was it what you learned? And let your passion kind of lead where you go, because you'll have a much happier and ultimately a lot more successful career as a result of it, because you're not going to be searching for the motivation for what you got to do every day. It's not a case of, oh, gosh, do I just call in sick today? I can't stand another day of my jerky boss doing my dull job. Find what really excites you and learn what opportunities you can turn it into, because you can create your own opportunities. It's easier now than ever, where we're not all dependent on large corporations to provide careers for us. People don't even stay in the same company typically more than 5 years or so. So go create your own company if you want to. Yeah. Find people that are in the area you want to, but follow your passion. You'll be a lot happier in the long run.
Yeah. And I think, too, kind of going off what you're talking about with that, and I 100% agree. I think one of the cool things about what you're doing is like these projects that you're working on, they're new. Like people really haven't worked on them, or if they have, it's on a smaller scale, or maybe like, a few years prior, maybe didn't have access to some of the stuff that you have to have now, and being able to work on something that's like constantly evolving and constantly changing, and you can drive that, like, for lack of a better term, we're talking about cars or boats, but like you can help drive that. And I think that's really cool. Yeah. So, all right, we may have already done it, but let's move our show into our closing segment, which we call Under the Spotlight. So the Spotlighters have been listening to us talk for the last however long, about 35 minutes so far. So what would be one thing that you would want them to walk away from this episode with? So you are under the spotlight.
Yeah, I think be aware of the fact that the way we make and use energy is fundamentally changing globally. The availability, the cost, the economics around renewable energy, and we are just at the beginning of the proliferation of electric vehicles. So you're going to see a dramatic change in our automobile infrastructure here over the next 5 to 10 years. And we're fortunate at Ideal Power that we are in a technology that's going to help make both of those better, more efficient, so that we're at an exciting time to be able to benefit from the global changes that are happening that I think are going to be good for everybody in the long term.
Yeah, I love that. And then, so I know that was our last question, but do you think it's important for people to kind of know where the energy comes from? Because I feel like a lot of people the power goes out, here in my apartment. I'm just like, what the hell, fill in the blank power company. We're not going to name names, but, I think that's got to be pretty important too, right? Because then you can kind of see how it evolves and how it affects you, because it does, even though you may not see it.
Yeah, just a little bit. Increased awareness can actually have a big impact.
Yeah.
If you get 10,000 people that say, you know what, I don't like where my energy comes from, and I have choices, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time to go exercise my choice.
Yeah.
Collectively, that starts to make a big impact.
Right. Yeah, definitely. All right. So if people want to, after listening to this episode, they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about Ideal Power, where are some places that you would want them to go to do that?
The best place to do it is our website, idealpower.com. We have, information out there that describes our technology and where it applies. There are press releases that come out as we do things with partners, projects, and stuff that we're working on. So we try and keep it pretty current. And then, we'll continue to put news out here during the course of the year if they want to follow us and see how we're doing.
Awesome. Love it. All right. So I will make sure that I put idealpower.com in the show notes, along with themorningspotlight.com and themorningspotlight@gmail.com, which are the website and email address of the show. If for some reason you want to reach out to me to get to Dan, I would be happy to make that introduction too. Also, shout out Josh Carey, who helped introduce us and got you on the show. I thought that was great. So Dan, thank you so much for coming on with the show with us today. Really appreciate it. This was, like I said, very unique, very interesting stuff. That I learned stuff today that I had no idea was actually happening in the world. But now a little bit of awareness can create a big difference. So I like that.
That's right.
So thank you so much for coming on the show with us today.
Thanks, Mike. It was my pleasure, and I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And the Spotlighters, thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.